Hi there, Malcolm here with my 132nd Booktube video, and today I'll be bringing you August's wrap-up and September's TBR. Big piles to get through as usual, so let's get cracking. First up, a couple of beach reads, kicking off with Empire of Gold by Mcdermott, part of the Wild Chase series. Archaeological adventures with lots of explosions, chases and the like. And then in this one, the race is on to find El Dorado. Full of crazy set pieces, lots of action, witty one-liners. The relationship between Eddie Chase and Nina Wilde is a bit on the rocks at the moment, and the little twist hinted in the previous book is very much in this one, which has consequences that knock into the next book. I've read quite a few of this series now, and okay, they do sort of all run into one. It's difficult to differentiate one from another to a degree. You know, they're in a particular country, they're trying to find a particular thing, there's a particular bad guy who's trying to kill them. But, you know, like with James Bond, there's not much difference between each film, but they're all enjoyable in their own right. Same with these. This one didn't disappoint. Some really good moments. It didn't drag at all. And despite being nearly 600 pages long, I finished it in a few days. Buy it. After that, I then read Poison by Chris Wooding. This was my book of the month. I have done a separate video on this, so I'll leave a link to that below if you want to go and find out what I thought of that. And then when I finished that book, I moved on to Asterix and the Olympic Games. The holidays finished, back home again, and going through my Asterix books once more. Got through a nice tidy pile last month, cracking on with it this month. These are all absolutely fantastic and brilliant, so I won't get too bogged down in those. They all have some great puns, wonderful artwork, visual gags, and there's a story in there somewhere, but that doesn't really matter too much. You're just there for the ride. And in this one, Asterix competes in the Olympic Games for no other reason than he can. Plot-wise, I would say this is perhaps the thinnest book. You know, there's no real reason behind anything, but you're there for the ride, and it's enjoyable enough as it is, with a very nice twist at the end. Booktastic. And then there was Asterix and the Cauldron. Whereas most of the Asterix books I'm reading are rereads. I've read them many times during my childhood and absolutely loved them, and so they do have a sense of nostalgia about them. This one I only ever had in French. And as I'm not very good with languages, French particularly, it was kind of lost on me, and so I think this was the first time I actually read it in English. But nostalgia means nothing. I thoroughly enjoyed this story, where Asterix is entrusted to look after a cauldron full of surcease for a neighbouring chief, but it gets stolen, or the surcease gets stolen, and he's banished along with Obelix, who comes along for the ride, and he tries to find out how to make more money to replace that was lost. And it just goes to show just how out of touch these ghouls are in their little remote village, where civilization has moved on. They very much kept at a standard past. Nothing wrong with that necessarily, but integrating into normal society, back then anyway, was not easy. A lot of fun with a nice twist at the end again. Booktastic. And then after that, Asterix in Spain, where there's a Spanish village holding out against the Roman invaders. As a ploy to get the Spanish village to toe the line, they kidnap the chief's son, Pepe. And Asterix and Obelix happen across a patrol that happens to have this prisoner, take out the control and endeavour to return Pepe back to his family. There's a really interesting dynamic between Asterix, Obelix, Dogmatix and Pepe. That's very heartwarming. But what's far more noticeable about this 14th volume of the series is that it's the one that introduces Unhygienix the fishmonger, his wife Bacteria, and it's also, coincidentally, the first time the ghouls fight amongst themselves. And indeed, I think with few exceptions, every book from now on, there is a fight amongst the ghouls, generally kicked off because of Unhygienix's fish, and a not so flattering remark made by fully automatics. Unhygienix and Bacteria are the last recurring characters to be introduced in the series, so it's quite a significant book for that reason as well. Booktastic. And then after that, The Devil Colony by James Rollins. This is part of the Sigma Force series. I started it on holiday but didn't quite have enough time to finish it. And this one deals with the conspiracy surrounding Israel, Native Americans, and some ancient technology. As a premise, I found quite a lot of the thoughts behind this pretty silly, but this was full of excitement and explosions, gunplay and intrigue, and was very enjoyable. It's been a while since I last read a book from the Sigma Force series, so it's really nice getting back into it again, meeting up with Peter Crow and his team, as well as the forever enigmatic Seishan, who is a far more interesting character now. And she's always was that sort of mysterious, deadly assassin, but you know, there's more to her now, which is very nice. Buy it. And then it was on to Asterix and the Roman Agent, book 15 of the series. This is one of my favourites of the lot, where there's this chap called Torturus Convolvus, who is able to say very few words and really get the back up everybody, who then blames everybody else for some perceived slight, and an argument or full-blown fight kicks off. And Julius Caesar cunningly sends this chap into the midst of the Gauls to try and get them to tear themselves apart from the inside. As already mentioned about Asterix in Spain, now that we've got unhygienics in his fish, the Gauls have started fighting amongst themselves anyway, and this guy is another catalyst to really drive a wedge between them all. Very cunning ploy, kind of backfires as you expect, but it's very enjoyable watching the whole thing play out. Booktastic. And the Gauls are off again, this time to Switzerland to get a flower so they get a mix, can make a magic potion to give to a Roman official who's been poisoned by a corrupt Roman governor while investigating him. So we go to Switzerland, so expect lots of mountains, cheese, fondues, yodeling, and cleanliness and punctuality, as well as banks. Lots of great stuff. Highlight for me being that Obelix gets himself completely wasted on a huge crate of beer and comes back from Switzerland thinking that the whole place is quite flat. Booktastic. And then The Mansions of the Gods, one of the few Asterix books that isn't titled Asterix and the such and such, where the Romans have another scheme to try and defeat the Gauls, and this time is to develop them. Or in other words, to cut down the forest and replace it with Roman developments, leaving the village as a native reservation. Much hilarity ensues as the Romans come along with their slaves to rip down trees, and the Gauls come along and replant them or regrow them using Get-to-Fix's magic acorns. But then there are extra levels put into this because the slaves are having to work harder and harder, and the Gauls realise that the only people they're hurting at the moment are the poor slaves, and so they do their best to make sure that the slaves can be freed. So there's quite a few complexities to this one. Very clever stuff. Absolutely hilarious. And the surprise champion of this one is Cacophonics, who they use every now and again to save the day, which he does in here with style. Booktastic. And next up, Asterix and the Laurel Wreath. Chief of Vital Statistics' wife, Mcdermott, has often mentioned her brother, Homeopathix, who lives in Lutetia, doing very well for himself, and she's tired of living with a boorish barbarian and would very much love to go and move into Lutetia and do well for herself with her husband. And as a result of this, her brother and her husband don't really see each other eye to eye, and this comes to a head when they travel to Lutetia to visit. Vital Statistics drags Asterix and Obelix along because he can't bear to be outnumbered, and while getting very drunk during the meal, he promises that he is just as good as Homeopathix, and promises that when he visits, he'll be able to serve a dish garnished with none other than Julius Caesar's laurel wreath. The result of which is Asterix and Obelix having to go off and retrieve said wreath. Another fantastic story, with the highlight for me being Asterix and Obelix's attempt at cooking. As this one is set heavily in the Roman civilization, there is a lot to deal with slavery in this one. So just a heads up for that. Otherwise, this is booktastic. And then after that, I then read The Indwelling by Tim Lahaye and J.B. Jenkins. This is book 7 of the Left Behind series, where the second coming's been and gone, all the faithful have been taken, and we follow those who have been left behind to try and pick up the pieces and work out just what the hell's going on. We're about halfway through the trials and tribulations, and this follows directly on from the ending of the previous book, where the man who would be the Antichrist has been assassinated. So here our heroes are on the run, in hiding, and trying to work out who actually did the deed, all the while things are getting harder and harder for everybody. Now, I've read the series before, and I certainly remember enjoying it a lot more than I have this time around, but thankfully I can say that by book 7 now, things have finally started picking up, and it was actually quite an exciting read. Excluding the prequels and sequels, this is a 12-book series, and I really do think that if they got rid of all the padding and all the unnecessary stuff that they've got in there, this could be a pretty strong 4 to 6 book series rather than a 12-book series. But there you go. But yeah, much better pace this one. A lot more was going on in here. Can't really give away too much about giving away spoilers, but I had become a little bit disillusioned with the series. This one has kind of reminded me why it was so good. So looking forward to proceeding to the next one. Worth reading. And then Asterix and Corsica. Exactly the same plot pretty much as Asterix in Spain. They come across a captive. This time he's a Corsican. And not the son of a chief this time. He just happens to be the chief of his region of Corsica. And with a fantastic name of Boni Wazarorix. So our heroes accompany him back to his homeland. Lots of great jokes, lots of great visual gags, and a send-up of the Corsican people in a loving and respectful way, of course. Booktastic. And then Asterix and Caesar's Gift, a book that I hadn't read before, even in French. So really excited to finally read this one, where a bunch of Roman soldiers have completed their years of service and are given tracts of land by Julius Caesar himself to go off and retire. and enjoy. But one particular soldier has been a drunk and completely useless the entire time of his service, and so as a punishment he is awarded the plot of land inhabited by the ghouls. However, the punishment doesn't really stick, because at the first bar he stops off, he buys his drink with this document. And so it's the barkeeper and his family who travel to the village expecting to own a nice tract of land, and are a bit disappointed to find it's not only inhabited, but inhabited by a bunch of lunatics who are pretty much indestructible. However, the ghouls are accommodating and allow them to move in and set up a drinking establishment there, something they don't already have. However, where the barman and the chief are able to settle the differences quite amicably, their two wives do not. A lot of fun stuff, booktastic. Right, so those are the books I have read. Now for the books I was going to be reading in September, bearing in mind it is now the 13th of September, so a bit late. So some of the books I'm going to be showing you, the books I'm going to read, I've actually finished already, but so there's Flood by Stephen Baxter, a book I started in August and desperately tried to finish reading before the end of it, but it took me about 10 days of September as well, so that was never going to happen. So I have read it, this is in my TBR pile, so I'll just talk about what it's going to be like. Flood follows the story of 4 hostages in Barcelona who are released near the beginning of the book, only to find that it's raining a lot. In fact, everywhere it's raining and the water levels are rising. So when they get home, rather than getting back to normal lives, they get back to a global catastrophe really, as the sea levels rise and rise and rise. I'm not just talking a bit here and a bit there, we're talking massive flooding all over the planet. And as the front cover of the book might suggest, we're not just talking a couple of metres or even a couple of 100 metres, we're talking thousands of metres. And it just follows the story of these 4 individuals as they try and survive, as they move from one high place to another high place. You have the politics in here, you have wars in here, as people squabble over what little land is left, how the refugees are dealt with or not, how relationships are maintained or break down. And so to find out what I thought of this, you have to wait until my wrap-up video next month. And then after this is going to be The Stranger Times by C.K. Mcdermott. This is a book gifted to me on my birthday by a friend. I'll promise that this has a similar wit to Terry Pratchett. I'm nearly 100 pages in already, and yes, it does have that kind of wit in there. The Stranger Times is a newspaper that covers the weird and the wonderful from around the globe, and is made up of a whole bunch of misfits and lunatics. And we follow the character of Hannah, who, as far as I can tell, is an ex-trophy wife who is trying to find her own way in the world, and this is pretty much the only job she can land, but she's not entirely sure what she's let herself in for. Really funny so far, but not quite sure what it's about yet, but happy to go on the journey with it. And after that, I'll then read Honour of the Queen by David Webber. This is book 2 of the Honor Harrington series. I've read book 1 twice now, so really looking forward to seeing the next instalment of the series. This is a futuristic space opera based from Earth with a Star Wars feel to it. Really like the first book, looking forward to this one. And after that, it's Piercing the Darkness by Frank Peretti, book 2 of the Darkness duology. Book 1 saw angels and demons fighting over the souls of a town. This is book 2, which I don't know quite where this is going to go from book 1, because book 1 was kind of nicely wrapped up, but we'll see what happens. Quite a thick book, and at this point of the month, I doubt I'll get through it all by the end of it. We'll see. And after this one, I'll then read The Mammoth Book of Best New SF 18. This features 28 science fiction short stories. I do love a good short story, hoping there's some in here. And at 722 pages long, I severely doubt I'll finish this by the end of the month, or start it. We'll see. Also hope to continue with my Asterix reading, and I also read to other people in the household. So to my boys, I am reading The Light Fantastic by Terry Pratchett. That's book 2 of the Discworld series. To my oldest on his own, I'm reading Lion Adventure by Willard Price, and to my youngest, I'm reading The Curse of the Gloam Gloser by Paul Stewart, illustrated by Chris Riddle, and that's part of the Edge Chronicles and book 1 of the Quint sequence, chronologically the first of the series. To my wife, I'm reading Dune by Frank Herbert in anticipation of the film coming out soon, and there's a very, very good chance that we'll finish this by the end of the month. It's a story of politics and survival on a desert planet inhabited by enormous worms. So confident that I am in finishing this by the end of the month. I'm also going to mention I'm going to then read Dune Messiah to her. Not all of it in this month, obviously, but I'm going to start it. I have read Dune before when I was about 14. I really don't remember it very much, so it's really nice reading it again and being reminded of bits I'd forgotten and learning bits I didn't even know were there. I certainly understand it a lot more anyway. Never read Dune Messiah, so looking forward to seeing where the story goes on from there. I'm still reading The Walking Dead, The Fall of the Governor Part 1 while boiling the kettle. I think that's it, so I'll stop it there. There you go, I hope you enjoyed that. That's quite an ambitious TBR, particularly as I've only read Flood so far. And a lot of those books are quite thick and it's only a 30-day month. We'll see. We'll see how many of those end up in next month's TBR as well. Such fun. So do you like being gifted books? Do you find that the people who give you books get it right? Or do you find that the books that you get given are completely not your sort of thing? I've been quite lucky so far, I must say. But I did once win a book I had no interest in. So answers or anything else you'd like to say below, please. But as usual, if you have nothing nice to say, then please keep it to yourself. Thank you. And until next time, see you later.